If you want to have the perfect start possible in Hollow Knight Silksong, you are in the right place. As your fellow traveler who is about to finish my first playthrough and wasted a lot of hours making mistakes, I will be giving 26 tips that will save you a lot of time and guesswork and help you avoid the common traps in the game. Like for example, accepting and completing quests or wishes available to you in the early game can reward you with useful items, currencies, and even progress some of the NPC's quest lines. So make it a habit to always check the quest board in Bone Bottom, which is your first hub in the game. Some of the quests will require you to find certain items or hunt specific enemies in the field. So it is wise to have as many quests as you can so you can progress them organically while exploring the world. You can also get NPC wishes or quests from certain individuals in the world. Most of the time, these NPCs will reward you with crucial special abilities that will help you access previously unreachable areas. So keep on the lookout of these NPCs. Memory lockets are one of the rare materials in the game that can expand your crest slots. So don't forget to use them on your favorite crests and expand their slots. A good upgrade example is using a memory locket and upgrading the hunter's crest for this crest to have at least 2 yellow slots. So you can equip the compass and the magnetic brooch tool, which are the 2 non-negotiable early tools that you should have, and more of them later. Did you know that saving and quitting can actually save you a lot of time? Yes, it does, my dear viewer. When you save and quit the game, like for example, you are in the middle of nowhere, the game will fast travel you back to the last bench you visited. This is pretty useful when you mess up your runs pretty badly and you want to avoid dying if there's no bench near your current location. You can also take advantage of this trick when farming for Rosary Beads. It is because when you save and quit, you also retain the Rosary Beads that you got before you did the trick. Rosary Beads are your main currency in this game, and I'm telling you, they are pretty scarce, especially in the early game. You will use them to unlock benches, beast stations, and buy maps, and more. But most importantly, use your prayer beads to buy useful items and tools from merchants. Since you know how the saving and quitting trick works, you can use this trick by finding a location where pilgrims are located near a bench area, and then farming these pilgrims. Then finally, saving and quitting. Do this over and over and you can farm Rosary Beads fast. While I've also prepared the best of the best early Rosary farming spots for you as well. Link in the description or find it by clicking the card here. Use this guide and you will never have money problems when buying all of the useful wares, especially in the early game. If you are getting value so far, subscribe to the channel. Liking the video and engaging in the comments helps me more than you can imagine. Join our Discord server and discuss role-playing games such as this, and I appreciate your support. Since we are talking about Rosary Beads, let's say you already have tons of them after knowing how to farm. I highly suggest storing your Rosary Beads when you can. You can do so by interacting with a special machine located in Greymore, which I'm showing the location on the screen right now for your convenience. Spending 80 beads on this machine will turn your beads into an item consumable known as the Rosary String. Using the Rosary String will give you 60 Rosary Beads in return, so you notice that you've lost 20 beads by making it. But the main idea is saving your Rosary Beads from being wasted when you failed retrieving your spool cocoon. Take the Rosary Strings as your insurance in real life. Hollow Knight Silksong borrowed a lot of elements from the Soulsack genre, and one of them is exhausting NPC dialogues. When you encounter these NPCs, make sure to talk to them over and over and you will notice that their dialogue changes as well. Most of the time, these NPC dialogues contains lore bits and pieces or useful information that may aid your journey. When starting the game, you will eventually find your first merchant in the game, and I can argue that all of the items she is selling is valuable. However, if you can only pick 1 or 2 items because of lack of beads, you can go wrong with a simple key and magnetic brooch. For the sake of spoilers, I will not be showing you where to use the actual key, but it is being used to open gates with simple locks, so it is nice to have when the need comes. Second is the mentioned magnetic brooch, which allow you to magnetize drop beads, which is a huge time saver, especially when doing farming sessions. Although if you follow my leveling guide, you will have enough beads to buy all of the items that the merchant sells, especially the mask piece. Moving to exploration tips, and when visiting a new area, your very first main objective is to find the map for that area. I cannot stress how important maps in Metroidvania games, so finding the map should always be your priority. The NPC Chakra is a merchant who sells the said maps, along with other useful map items that you should be buying as well. This NPC is a fighter, and she will help you occasionally in certain fights, and by fighting alongside her, you will see that her weapon are throwing discs. Most of the time, you can easily find her in certain areas by being on the lookout for scattered thrown discs and using them as breadcrumbs to track her nearby location to finally buy the map. In connection with the previous tip, Chakra is selling all kinds of map tools as well. I highly suggest trying your best to buy everything she offers since you will be getting all of the markers you can get. The compass tool allows you to track Hornet's location when opening your map. So if you can only buy one item at a time, it is highly suggested to get the compass first. Then if you have the cash, buy everything that she offers as mentioned. Using markers to note unreachable areas, secrets, and strong enemies can save you tons and tons of time when backtracking later on. I'm telling you, your markers will dry out easy, especially since there are a lot of secrets in this game. Just like in every Metroidvania game, backtracking is essential and should be a habit every time you get new abilities or tools. This may sound basic for seasoned Metroidvania players, but for the ones new to the genre, this can mean everything. Since you already know how to use map markers, so when you backtrack, it is easy to pinpoint these locations. Previously inaccessible areas will let you progress in the game or even get strong upgrades and tools that you can use to power up your builds. Pogos, or the downward thrust platforming, is much challenging this time compared to the first title. The most annoying part is, the downward thrust in Silksong has a diagonal animation, so it can be a pain to navigate your first red flowers or the flowers where you will do your pogos. My tip for you is don't try aiming for the flowers since it will be much harder that way when at mid-air. Trust me, you will miss a lot and die a lot if you do this. What you do instead is avoid as much airtime as you can, and whenever Hornet is very close to the actual red flowers, press down and square immediately. This will lessen your airtime and allowing you to focus on your timings only, especially when doing a series of pogos. I cannot stress how I wasted a lot of hours not knowing this tip. This could not make sense at first, but trust me, when you finally are doing the pogos or the downward thrust in series of attempts, you will appreciate this tip. Speaking of platforms, knockbacks in this game can kill you in certain scenarios, so you should also consider it, especially when engaging enemies in great heights. When you attack, notice that there's a knockback going on. So if you don't mind your distance when fighting on ledges and trying to damage enemies, you will fall easily and potentially wasting a lot of time. Of course, getting hit knocks Hornets back as well, but that is obvious. Although you may not see the effectiveness of this tip in the footage that I'm showing you right now, try to imagine falling on lavas, spikes, and super high places because of knockbacks. A pretty basic tip is taking advantage of the scout feature. It took me a couple of hours already before I discovered it, so I am letting you know as early as possible. Pressing and holding the up and down directional buttons let you scout the direction you press. This will most of the time saves you from enemies or environmental dangers like lava, spikes, and more. Taking advantage of the vaulting and launching animation when interacting with platforms or ledges lets you climb faster. By practicing this tip, it will be easier and faster for you to get through series of ledges or platforms. It could be tricky during your first tries, but basically, pressing the jump button immediately when Hornet is in the middle of the climbing animation at the edge of a platform will do the trick. Actually being paranoid when finding secret paths or passage or breaking hidden walls rewards you big time in this game. What do I mean by getting paranoid, I hear you asking, my dear viewer? It means that making it a habit of attacking walls, especially when you hit dead ends, or running or forcing yourselves towards dead ends. Most of the time, it reveals secret paths, especially when you found a dead end or an empty room. Empty rooms most of the time is an indication that there's a secret path in it or a breakable wall, and you will be surprised how many secret rooms this game has. Not all gates can be unlocked with a key or a special items, so every time you encounter a gate which halting you to progress, hit it first with few swings and see if you can destroy it. There are destroyable gates in this game, and this is a little bit tricky to just rely on your visuals. Using the sprinting ability wisely can mean a lot of things, and this ability can kill you big time. When you are in a sprint animation, notice that Hornets is harder to control, adding a touch of realism on the ability. Notice that when you change the direction, there's a little delay when doing so, just like in real life. So when you first unlock this ability, don't sprint blindly, since you will find yourself getting killed from environmental traps or hazards, or it can even kill you easily in boss fights. There are a lot of bosses that can damage you with 2 health bars by just making contact with them, and most of the time the sprint ability is the one killing you in that specific instance. Only use this ability if you absolutely know the timings when platforming, or you already mastered the enemy's movesets. Newcomers will surely appreciate this tip, since Metroidvania maps are usually overwhelming, especially this game has a lot of verticality in its areas. Although early game is a bit linear at first, but when you progress enough, the game opens up where you can navigate different areas at a time. My advice to you is sticking to one area as much as possible, and only move on to the next one if you're absolutely sure that you've already explored the current area that you are in. If you continue to hop between areas frequently, you will find yourself easily be overwhelmed and disoriented. This game is already hard enough when it comes to platforming and combat, so try to pace your exploration and take one area at a time. While on the other hand, I'm not saying that be very strict to it, but limit the areas to explore. On the other hand, you do have an option to explore another area if you find an enemy that you can't beat or feel that it is much stronger than your current level. Moving to my combat tips, and compared to the previous Hollow Knight title, you can actually heal at mid-air in Silksong. This is pretty useful when fighting a boss who constantly pressure you with horizontal ground attacks. By doing this, you will find yourself a wiggle room to breathe when you heal at mid-air, so you can get back in the fight with more health. Silk Spear is your first damaging ability in the game, and boy, this ability hits hard. However, just like in healing, it will require spool charges for you to use it, so you will find yourself balancing between offense and healing most of the time. It is wise to save your spool charges on healing first rather than spamming your Silk Spear, especially in early games when you are trying to learn the game. If you don't manage your spool charges wisely, you'll be dying a lot in hard fights. Only use the Silk Spear or any damaging ability if you are already confident in the fight or in boss battles. It is normal for you to die over and over when facing boss fights in this game. While backtracking to the boss location, you will gradually accumulate spool charges. Especially most of the benches in this game are placed way far away to the boss location. When you arrive at the boss arena, don't destroy your cocoon yet and save it for later use. Use your spool charges with skill first or in healing, and when you already done so, that's the time you actually destroy the cocoon. Destroying the cocoon gives you max spool charges, so it will be a huge waste destroying it at the start of a boss fight. However, be very extra careful when doing this trick, since if you fail to destroy your cocoon and you die, you will lose all of your Rosary Beads in the process. Parry or clashes is a thing in this game, and it can give you a lot of advantages in certain scenarios. Parries, or to be exact clashes, happens when you time in your attack at the right moment after the enemy pulls off its own attack. You will hear a clashing sound when you successfully did a clash, making you invincible from incoming damage. You're not required to do this, but if you master clashes, it can save you from getting damaged when fighting in tight spaces. On the other hand, you can also deflect projectiles back to the enemies to damage them, but the timing is much more forgiving compared to clashes. Not every enemy drops Rosary Beads, and as mentioned, Rosary Beads only drops from pilgrims and other humanoid type enemies. So skipping some of the enemies may be ideal to you, like bugs, flies, and more. Especially every enemy in this game can turn your runs in a nightmare, even the smallest ones. So be wise when fighting your battles. Doing sprint attacks can give you a lot of advantage in combat. One example is the sprint attack can give you an ample of wiggle room when dodging enemy attacks, because after surprising enemies with sprint attack, this ability leaps you into the air, where you can do pogos or do a downward thrust as a follow-up attack. Although the sprint attack animation changes when you change your crest, the Hunter's Crest lets you perform good sprint attacks. In the heat of battle, there is a high chance that you do forget you have offensive tools. Take the time understanding what are your tools or what each of them can do, and using them frequently in boss fights or elite enemies can give you strong advantage. Like for example, the early straight pin is more than good enough to chip away a boss's health. Very easy to use and easy to spam as a ranged attack between downtimes in combat. Just like in Souls-like games, being observant with your enemies heavily rewards you. This is the key of beating even the hardest bosses in the game. Watching the boss reactions, when and where to strike depending on their movesets and behavior is the key thing and the only way for you to conquer this game. Bosses in this game have well-telegraphed movesets, so you can react accordingly and counter them with your attacks. Make sure to observe in a considerable amount of time, and not for long, you will master the fight. That is a lot of useful tips, and these are enough to give you the perfect start in the game. But what if you're looking for the best Rosary Beads farm in early game? Click on this video and I will catch you on the next one.